All right, so, we got to talk about this P. Diddy situation.
Yeah, it's heavy stuff.
It's like every day there's a new headline, and it's just wild.
It goes way beyond your typical celebrity scandal, though, right? We're talking about organized crime, sex trafficking, abuse of power. I mean, these are really serious allegations.
Yeah, and it's not like a one-time thing either. The indictment from the Southern District of New York makes it seem like this goes way back.
You're right. They're saying it goes back to like 2008 at least. But we got to be careful. This is still an ongoing legal case in Combs. He's innocent until proven guilty, right?
Right, of course.
Yeah.
We're not here to, pass judgment. We're just trying to make sense of it all. Unpack these charges and understand what's going on.
Exactly. Looking at the facts and trying to understand.
So let's break it down. We've got 3 felony counts here. Racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and transportation to engage in prostitution.
Okay.
I'm not going to lie. When I hear these legal terms, it's kind of hard to wrap my head around it.
Give me a lot.
Can you just, give it to me straight? What do these charges actually mean?
Yeah, so racketeering conspiracy, that's the most serious one. It basically means that someone is engaging in, a pattern of criminal activity as part of some kind of organized group, like a mob boss. But in this case, the indictment alleges that it's Combs who's using his power and connections in the music world, right?
So instead of traditional organized crime, it's like he's using the music industry to...
Right, to allegedly run this criminal operation.
Wow. Okay, and what about sex trafficking?
So that gets into exploiting someone for sexual purposes. And it often involves force, threats, manipulation, really heavy stuff.
And that's where the transportation to engage in prostitution comes in.
Yeah, moving people across state lines for that purpose.
Okay, so it's like a whole web of interconnected charges here.
And what they're trying to show is that this is a pattern, not just a one-off thing.
Right.
The prosecution, they're saying that Combs used his employees, his money, all his connections to basically keep this alleged operation going.
And this is where those freak-offs come into play, right?
Yeah.
I gotta say, when I first read that in the indictment, I was like, what?
Yeah.
Can you talk about that? What are they alleging happened at those events?
So, the indictment, it describes these freak-offs as these elaborate sex performances.
Like organized and produced.
Right. Organized, produced, the whole 9 yards. They allegedly went on for days, and Combs is accused of using drugs and coercion, even abuse, to get people to do what he wanted. The prosecution is essentially saying he created a situation where consent was, questionable at best, and people were taken advantage of.
You're saying they're alleging he used drugs to make people more compliant.
That's what they're saying. And on top of that, there are accusations of physical, emotional, even verbal abuse.
This is dark. This is really dark.
It is, and it doesn't stop there. The indictment also goes into detail about alleged threats. They're saying anyone who tried to speak out against Combs, anyone who might damage his reputation, they were met with intimidation.
So it wasn't just about what was allegedly happening at these freak-offs, but also about keeping it quiet.
That's what the prosecution is arguing. They're saying Combs and those around him would go to any lengths to maintain control and protect his public image. And we're not just talking threats here. We're talking kidnapping, even arson.
Whoa, hold on. Kidnapping and arson?
That's what the indictment alleges.
To, silence people.
The prosecution is saying these were acts of intimidation meant to send a message, and that message was, you don't mess with P. Diddy.
This is serious stuff.
It gets intense. The prosecution used this to argue against bail, actually.
Because he's a flight risk.
They said he's a flight risk, yeah, and that he might try to tamper with witnesses. They even brought up these text messages, right, where Combs is allegedly threatening to leak explicit videos.
Oh, wow.
So they're building this whole case around this pattern of intimidation.
So it sounds like the prosecution is painting a picture of someone who, felt untouchable.
Yeah.
Used to getting his way. And if anyone threatened that, well, they were dealt with.
Right, and they're saying he was willing to go to extreme lengths to protect his image, to protect his power.
It's one thing to hear these allegations in the abstract.
Yeah.
But then you remember, these are real people's lives. It's heavy stuff.
It is. And it's important to note that through all this, Combs maintains his innocence, right?
Right.
His lawyer, Mark Agnifilo, he's been pretty vocal, saying that the prosecution is unjust and that Combs has been cooperating fully.
Okay, so what's Agnifilo's defense strategy here? What's he saying about all this?
Well, his argument seems to be that, maybe Combs is an imperfect person. Those are his words, but he's not a criminal.
Imperfect person. Yeah. That's an interesting choice of words.
It is. It makes you wonder, right?
Yeah, Is he acknowledging some wrongdoing, but saying it doesn't mean he's guilty of these specific charges?
Exactly. And Nifalo is trying to humanize him a little. Remind everyone that Combs is a person, not just this larger-than-life celebrity, but he's also drawing a line, right? Saying, okay, maybe he's made some mistakes, but this is a step too far.
And that's what makes this so compelling. Because we're not talking about this in a vacuum, are we?
Not at all.
This isn't the first time Combs has been accused of something serious.
That's right. This arrest, these charges, they're happening against a backdrop of other accusations. Some of them go way back.
Yeah, we're talking about lawsuits alleging rape, sexual assault, forced drugging.
Right. And don't forget the CNN footage.
Oh, man, that was tough to watch. Combs assaulting his ex-girlfriend, Cassie.
It kind of shattered that carefully crafted image,
Exactly.
And while we have to, presume innocence until proven guilty.
Of course.
It's hard to ignore, right, this history.
It's a pattern.
It makes you question.
And it seems like Combs himself knows there's a perception problem here, even if he's denying any actual wrongdoing. Because didn't he release a statement back in December calling those accusations sickening?
He did.
He said his accusers were just trying to get a quick payday.
It's a common defense tactic. Discredit the accusers. Make it about money, not about the actual allegation.
Right. But that doesn't really fly anymore, does it? I mean, not like it used to.
No, not with the #MeToo movement and everything. People are more likely to believe accusers now, to question powerful figures.
So where do we go from here? What's next for Diddy?
So right now he's being held at the Metropolitan Detention Center. No bail.
Because of what we were talking about before, the flight risk and the witness tampering.
That's what the judge said. They're concerned.
Has a trial date been set?
Not yet. And this is where it gets even wilder, because they're not just building a case against Combs. The investigation is ongoing.
So they're still digging, trying to figure out how deep this goes.
Yeah, and they're finding a lot. Damian Williams, the U.S. attorney on the case, he said they've talked to over 50 victims and witnesses already.
50?
50. And it might not stop there,
What do you mean?
Williams has hinted that there could be more charges, maybe against some of the people around Combs, associates, employees. This might not just be about P. Diddy himself.
Wow. So we're talking about like a whole network of people.
Potentially, yeah. And if that's true, it makes you question the whole system, right? The music industry, the people around these stars. Were there others who knew about this? Who enabled it?
That's like, how do you even begin to address that?
It's a huge question because it goes beyond one person's actions, right? It's about power. Who has it? Who protects it? And who's willing to look the other way?
And that's something we see time and time again, don't we?
Yep.
Not just in music, but in all these industries.
Right. It's about those systems of power and influence. And it's hard to break through that. But this case, it really forces us to confront all of it. The public image we see, the music, the fame, and then the reality of what might be happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, it makes you think twice about who you're supporting, the art versus the artist, that whole conversation.
And how easily we can get caught up in it all.
It's like, we want to believe the best, but sometimes
the truth is a lot more complicated.
This whole thing, it's a lot to process. It's a lot to think about.
It is. And it reminds us that this isn't just a story, it's about real people and real lives.
Exactly. In this case, this is just the beginning. I have a feeling this is going to be a long road.
I think you're right. But it's an important conversation to have.
It is. And on that note, we want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on this P. Diddy situation? How do you think this will impact the music industry? Because this is a conversation we all need to be having. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and we'll be back next time with another deep dive into a whole new story.